Welcome to A Homegrown Family Podcast, where we grow the produce and the kids. Hey everybody, welcome to A Homegrown Family Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Metler, and today we are here once again. And it's always kind of interesting to go back and check out your statistics of your podcast. You know, I hadn't been on in a while, so I was kind of checking it out to see if people are still downloading episodes and whatnot. And it's kind of interesting to note that 25% of my listeners come from the Minneapolis, Bloomington, St. Paul area in Minnesota. So shout out to you guys. Keep on listening, ladies and gentlemen. Keep it up. You know, rate the podcast. Consider making a donation by clicking the support button below, the link in the show notes. And then a small donation of $5 goes a long way. And rating the podcast will allow it to help and reach more people, get the podcast out there a little bit more often when people do little searches and things. So yeah, get out there and reach more people. So one aspect of homegrown, in my mind, one component of this podcast, right, is going out and raising or growing your own food, whether that's, in your vegetable garden or raising livestock, or hunting, like it was in the previous episode. Kind of knowing where your food comes from and, putting in that effort to get it yourself, right? So that's one component that I always think about when I think of homegrown. You think of homegrown foods, homegrown preservatives, raised animals, chickens, eggs, the whole bit. So last episode was hunting pronghorn in North Dakota, and this episode it's going to be about fishing for salmon in Lake Michigan. I have my brother David on board here today as one of the fishermen that were along with on the boat.
Good morning, everyone. My name's David Metler. I'm Joe's younger brother, and I had the opportunity to join him on a fishing trip along with a few of our friends this summer to Lake Michigan. Had a great time and looking forward to talking about it here.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who remember, I've mentioned my coworker and friend Craig, multiple times in this podcast now. Mentioning that he took me elk hunting in western North Dakota, pronghorn hunting in western North Dakota, and he had this kind of setup where every single late July, early August, he'd always go out Lake Michigan to go salmon fishing with his dad and a couple of relatives that were a little bit on the older side now. And this year, his dad's like, I don't know if I can go. I'm not as stable as I used to be on my legs, and sometimes you can hit some waves, and the boat can be a little tippy, and things like that. So, long story short, Craig just had himself planned to go, and he's like, well, you need 3 or 4 people to go on the boat to make it worth it, for a charter, have a good time with people that and everything like that. And he reached out to his captain, to figure out some kind of dates, when would be a good time to go fishing out there this year. And he has this guy that he kind of goes fishing with, his captain. He's probably about my age, less than 40 anyways, but he just finished medical school actually for foot doctor, so he has less time on his hands now that he's fully employed and everything. So he's trying to figure out some dates and things, and Craig's also trying to figure out if he had enough people to go. So he asked me if he wanted to go fishing in Lake Michigan. I was like, oh, you know what? My wife likes salmon. I could probably go, I'm not a big fish eater myself, but salmon's about as fishy as I get. If you get anything else more fishy than that, I'm kind of, you get into the squid and the crabs and stuff like that. It's just not for me. And I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I don't know what you, David.
No, thank you. I like my walleye and panfish, and the salmon's really good, but I don't need shrimp or crab or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fully a taste thing or if it's just like I can see what the animal was. You kind of see its shell, you see its, and just kind of just internally, it's like, ugh. You take a steak.
Bugs of the sea, man. Bugs of the sea.
Yeah, you take a steak and it doesn't look like a cow, okay? Like, can't tell it was a cow. All right. Anyways, he asked me if I could go, and he's like, well, we could use, 3, 4 people would be better because you can split costs a little bit better in hotel rooms and things. But obviously, if you get 4 people and you only catch 3 people's worth of fish, you don't get quite as much. But, more the merrier, better company. You kind of leave that possibility open to get as much as you can, right? And so here we are. We had planned on a date, set it aside. We had my brother David, coworker and friend Craig, and my brother-in-law, best friend Steve, all set out to go fishing. And so a little bit of the logistics is that we're hoping, I'm located in Fargo, David's southern Minnesota, Craig's in Fargo, and Steve's kind of, east of Fargo, 45 minutes or so. So my plan was, I could pick up David and Craig, and then David could either, try to drive up to us and meet us partway through, or What ended up happening, David?
Well, so I have four little kids, and my wife is from Bismarck, North Dakota. So what happened was I drove my family out to Bismarck first, so 6 hours, and then I drove back to Fargo and hopped in with these guys. Did our whole drive out to Michigan and back, and then drove to Bismarck, and then drove back to southwest Minnesota. So I don't know, put on 50 hours of driving probably for the fishing trip.
Yeah, you put in a long haul there. I know you talked about flying out from Bismarck to Escanaba, which is where we stayed the first night, and then catching a ride from there to where we were going to go fishing. But yeah, so there's a little bit of logistics between everybody, but we left on a Wednesday morning. I think David and I stayed up way too late playing Xbox the night before, but bringing back some childhood memories, I guess.
We stayed awake for the whole drive, so we shouldn't have stayed up too late, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad if I remember right. So we drove over to Escanaba on Wednesday, stayed there in a hotel Wednesday night, and then we left from there to the eastern side of Lake Michigan. So we went all the way around the lake, basically, on the north side. And drove in our 5 hours on Thursday to get to kind of the middle of Lake Michigan there, I'm not going to tell you exactly where we went because, good fishermen never tell where their fishing hole is. But, so we went down there at a place there and started off fishing right away on Thursday afternoon. I think it was like 4:30. And then the plan was to go, we basically paid for two slots. We paid for an evening fish Thursday evening, and we paid for a Friday morning fish, thinking to ourselves, the fish are biting in the evening, you got a good chance. And if they're not biting in the morning, well, at least you got the evening fish in. So we kind of tried to cut our losses a little bit and maximize our fishing time. And if we were going to drive, it was 5 hours first day, and it was like 8, 9. The first day,
9 hours.
9 hours first day, and then 5 hours second day. You don't want to make it worth it, right? And so we get out there Thursday, and then we go fishing. I've been halibut fishing on small boats and stuff like that before, up in Alaska and things. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your kind of first experience of this whole thing, Dave, and kind of what you thought, seeing the boatyard and hopping on a little 22-footer or 24-footer or whatever it was.
So it's definitely the biggest boat that I've been on as far as fishing, because this is my first experience in any sort of boat that large that's chartered. I've only been on the smaller boats here up in the little lakes in Minnesota. I thought, these are some pretty big boats here. Look really nice. Got a really nice setup, lots of rods and lots of tackle there, and even a bathroom in it, right? So I was like, "Woo!" Just fancy
over the edge.
yeah. Well, don't want to fall out, so.
But, hey, there's guardrails.
That was actually. Yeah. So that was actually one of the jokes was, the guys. I'm a little on the skinnier side, right? And so the other three guys, Joe, Steve, and Craig, are a little more muscular. So the joke was that they were going to have to hold on to my belt while I was reeling the fish in so I wouldn't fall in.
Yeah, we're kind of talking up the weight of these fish a little bit.
Yeah, they were talking it up a little bit, yeah. So no, it was nice. It seemed really calm out. Yeah, this is going to be good. This doesn't look too choppy or anything, but they were talking about there being some waves, and we should back up a hair. We did take the patches. I don't remember exactly what they're called, but they're for motion sickness. And we thought, I don't know if we need these or not because I've never been on a boat like this, but I don't want to be throwing up on this fishing trip that we paid for because I didn't spend $20 to get these little patches to wear to make sure we weren't throwing up while we were out there.
So I had some experience in Alaska or whatever on the same kind of size boat. Definitely was bigger waves that day. But I know that I'm one that tends to get motion sick, even in the car, sit in the passenger seat sometimes. And so I know that when I was in Alaska there and on a charter boat too, I didn't take any of this medication, but I knew that I get car sick. So I was kind of watching the horizon the whole time. Some people look down and watch the waves. As you realize, I'm looking up, and out of that charter, I was the only one who didn't puke. And everybody else is like, oh, I'm fine. I don't get car sick. There's nothing. And so I was a little bit worried. I'm like, why don't I get sick? And I'm just going to shout out to my friend Sloan right there. If he ever listens to this, you were definitely one that puked. Just saying. Yeah, he probably had the worst of it all. He said he had no problems getting car sick. So I'm like, I don't know, Craig. I should take some Dramamine or something, or whatever. He's like, oh, there's these patches. He's like, I got a couple, and I'm like, David, you car sick? Yeah, I don't know, but I don't want to risk it. So David went to his doctor and got some patches, and shared them with Steve and I and stuff. So actually, did Steve end up taking any?
No, I don't think Steve did.
I think he braved it out and said he's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was fine, yeah.
It's probably all that snowmobiling as a kid.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, we wanted to be prepared to make sure that we didn't, end up ralphing and causing a miserable time. Later, we heard from our captain that there was this crew of 3 that one guy, ended up ralphing like within 30, 40 minutes, and they're like, oh, no worries, we'll I'll keep it together so the other guys can fish, and he just had really awful time, multiple.
And that was in the evening.
Nothing left in his gut, yeah.
Yeah, so in the evening they went back because he was feeling so sick, right? And then apparently they went out again the next morning, and he still didn't take anything. He figured he'd be fine again, right? And then he was sick again. Like I think that's what he said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he did it 2 times in a row, and it's like, come on, man, just take the patch or the pills or something, like.
Or don't go on the boat and let your friends fish, man. Like, yeah. Don't take them down with you. Yeah. But so we were heading out, that first evening, 4:30. Met the guy. Him and the first mate, Hand. The first mate, Hand, was also another captain, actually. So between 2 of them, instead of hiring a hand, since they're not, fishing full time in the summer, they kind of take turns on the weekends and things. One will use his boat and his rigs and his jigs and stuff, and then the other will switch around. And so it's kind of cool that we actually had 2 captains on the boat, and they kind of had tossed around different ideas between each other, like, hey, what do you think this is, this color, that ain't biting. And they'd talk all this lingo. I had no idea what they were saying, at the time.
Yeah, but it was kind of fun because they were almost competing a little bit, because they would put their special thing on this line and the other guy would put his stuff on the other line. And I don't know why that one's hitting and mine's not.
Yeah, it was. And then actually, for a while there, it was the first mate's jig, I think, that was hitting on like everything, and the captain's wasn't. I think he was getting a little bit distraught or irritated,
But no, they were very, very good crew, captain. Very fun. Yep.
Yeah. No, they shoot the breeze, and we talk about everything, from hunting, whitetail or whatever, and this and that and whatnot. So it was a good time there, and our plan to go into this was, okay, well, we'll take turns, reeling in the different fish, and I guess we anticipated mostly fishing for king salmon. Was kind of, Craig's experience. You get kings, occasionally you get a coho or 2, which is also kind of a salmon. We're thinking we're getting kings, I'm trying to remember how big these were. I think our biggest one was 18 pounds.
Ones were probably, the bigger ones were probably 16, 18 pounds.
Yeah. So that's one of the bigger ones that we caught. I think so they can get upwards low 20s, if they get a real big king. So we're thinking, okay, we each get, was the daily limit 5 per person? So we got up to 20?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and then each person can put in, I think it was 3 lines. And so we had 12 lines. You could have up to 12 lines running off the back of the boat. And they kind of had it set up interestingly, is that they had 3 or 4 off the sides that were shallower water. I think they were like 60 feet deep. I think it was the shallow ones. And then on the back of the boat, they had some deep rigs that were, going closer to like 100, I think. So I think they 100 up to like 40 feet, with the majority of their stuff going in that 60 to 80 foot range. So they'd throw out 12 lines, but they're fishing, 6, 7 different types of lures at 3 or 4 or 5 different depths. And so they're really, hitting their variety of things. And so they change things up on the fly. Oh, they're biting on this, or whatever. So we went into it, and we're going to say, hey, we're going to go in rotation. Craig, you're last in the rotation because you fished this 100 times, And then I've done some fishing, so and I've done some dip netting too, and so I'm like, I'll go second to last. And then so it was between Steve and David, and I don't know, how'd you guys duke that one out? Definitely wasn't an arm
Um,
wrestle because Steve would have won.
yeah. So I seeded the first place spot because I understand that I would lose any competition at different levels with Steve, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I let Steve go first, which actually worked out really well. And so Steve went first. You know, it was pretty slow to start off with.
Yeah, it was probably about
But
45
Steve,
minutes in before we got our first bite.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, it took a little while, but that was typical, I think, what they were
Yeah,
saying.
we had to drive out there. It took 30, 45 minutes to drive out to where we were trying to fish and stuff. Yeah.
The waves were pretty bad. We had probably 6 foot tall waves, I think, that evening because he said none of the small boats even came out.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
only a half a dozen larger boats that came out in the evening, and what's funny is the other boat captains would also be like texting and calling him about what he's using. So this guy was really good.
Yeah. Hey, where you at? I'm over here. And he's like, gosh, all this guy's got to do is call me. And then it's like, yeah, this one here, he just likes to chit chat. Blah, 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 blah. He's like, hey, you want to know my spot, what I'm using? I'll tell you a little bit. But I don't need to talk about what you've been fishing all day. Man, I got company here. Let's go.
Yeah, got paying customers. But no, so Steve went first. And unfortunately, it came off the hook or something.
Yeah, he was kind of reeling for a little bit and then lost it. Yeah.
And that
shook it
that
loose.
happens. Yeah.
So I think the captain was saying actually that a couple nights before or like last weekend, they lost 3 out of 12 or something like that, or 3 out of 15. So not super high incidence there, I guess, in terms of ones that they lose, but there's some.
Yeah, usually you do lose what you said. You only land like a third of the cohos you get on, or something, or half, or something like that.
Yeah, because they like to shake them around a little bit more than the king salmon kind of just float and try fighting it.
Yeah, the king salmon. So the way I looked at it, when from comparing it to like fishing in Minnesota, smaller lakes, was like the kings were more like a northern, where they would just kind of like dive and they wouldn't flop around or anything. They'd just pull on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a northern. And then the cohos, I was like, yeah, it's kind of more like a bass. They're kind of flopping around and trying to shake it loose and stuff like that. That's kind of what I thought of in my head anyway, comparing it to smaller lake fishing. So Joe was talking about these reels that are out in different depths, but they're also in different distances and stuff too, because they got to keep all these lines separate, right? Not tangled up and stuff, which they do a really good job. I think we only tangled up like once or twice the whole night. They basically, right, the fish hits the lure or whatever's on there. They set the hook and then they hand you the rod. And so we get another hit. I grab the rod and then I start reeling. I look down at this one actually had a distance thing on it, and it was going farther out. Right, it started, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty far out. And I'm like, it's still going out. It went out to like 300 feet, and I was like, oh, this isn't good. And so you don't have a holder or anything, so I just jammed this rod like into my like hip, bone area.
Yeah, it wasn't very comfortable.
No, it's not very comfortable, and I'm jamming that in there, and I'm trying to kind of push back against the back of the boat, so kind of like leaning up against it, and then 1 foot back, and then you're kind of riding these waves at the same time.
And in between waves, you kind of reel in a little bit.
Yeah. So you kind of pull back, and then you reel the slack. Pull back, reel the slack. And it took more than 10 minutes to reel this fish in. And these guys are just laughing behind me because, again, skinny, not quite as buff guy that I am.
Well, David's over there like, my forearms burn.
Okay, they did. So we reel this fish in, and I didn't know like what to expect, right? And so this fish comes in, and it's one of those bigger kings. It's probably like a 16-pound or so king. And I look back at these guys. I'm like, guys, if this is the fish, like I'm only doing every other round, like every other rotation, because I can't handle this. Like my arms hurt.
It's probably one of the bigger fish of the weekend, actually. I think it was top 3 anyways.
Yeah, I would say we probably got 6 or so that size that night, or maybe something like that.
Yeah, or just a hair under. Yeah, so David got his big one. We're all like, ha ha ha. And then one of the side reels reel up. I get it, grab it. Like a minute, he's in. Yeah, it was a small king. Reeled it in. That was a little 6-pounder or whatever it was. Hey, sweet. Craig, I think can't remember if Craig lost his to his first round. I think he might have. Either that, he reeled in another small one
Yeah,
too.
we only lost one or two that night, but it might have been right away.
Yeah, yeah. And then the captains are like, "Oh man, we're hitting a patch coho here," because they keep on shaking the line off. He's like, "Man, we're like 2 for 4, like we're only 50% right now. This is bad." But and it was pretty steady. Like every 15 minutes after that, we'd start getting one on, or whatever, and kind of reeling in some more cohos. We had a lot of cohos and like one king, I think, maybe two smaller ones on top of that. So I think we can get up to 20, and I think we had like 12. We were stuck at 12 for 12, 13, 14 for quite a while into the evening fish, and we're getting kind of close to dark. And I remember the captain asking us, "Hey, are you guys wanting to try to see if we can kind of continue on some coho patches here, or do you want to try to see if we can find some kings?" And
some
Craig's,
big kings, like some trophy fish.
yeah, he's like,
I remember looking at them. I'm like, "Oh, these are all trophy fish."
right. I'm like, I ain't complaining. And so, kind of looked at us and was like, "So yeah, you want to go fishing for some big kings or what? Or do you want to kind of keep on hitting these guys here that we know we could probably maybe get a couple more yet before dark, And kind of looked at each other a little bit. And I looked at him like, "We came here for kings, So that's gonna, we got another day of fishing. We're not doing too bad. We didn't get skunked. Let's see what we can get, So he's like, "All right, sounds good." So then we, it's like 15 minutes to get to this other little honey hole of his. I don't remember what he called the place, and then we get there. We're kind of like, okay, yep. Awesomely, one line goes, and I think David's up again. He's like, or something like that. And then another line goes, and Steve goes in and starts reeling in. And I'm like, holy cow! And then another one goes down. We had 3 or 4 down all at once.
So what happened was, I think I reeled mine in, and all 3 of you guys were reeling in, and then I had to go again.
Yep.
Like we had like 4 or 5 right in a row, and there was I have a video of all 3 of you guys reeling and fishing at the same time, and Steve, he was reeling in the entire time while like 4 other fish were reeled in.
Yeah.
Like he had one of those that were way out there.
Yeah, you had the deep one. Yeah, because then you finished, I finished, Craig finished, you went back on, and Steve's still reeling.
Yeah, and so yeah, in that last like 20, 30 minutes, we limited out. Like we caught like a bunch of big king salmon right at the end.
Yeah, right up until the last fishing daylight, basically, or time,
Yeah.
Although you can night fish too, so I actually don't know if there's much of a time limit, I don't think, actually. But we also it was like, oh, we're at 18, we're at 19, we're at 20, and we're like, holy cow. And then another one came on, and it's like, well, keep on reeling, because, the captain has a license. It's not kosher for the captain to keep one, but, if you accidentally lose one, then you still have your 20, you're maxed out, right? And he keeps on reeling and reeling and reeling. And then we got our with the last 20 on, and I think he shook the last one off. And there it goes. So that way it didn't bring it into the boat.
Yeah, he got close. He's like, it's a little one. He just kind of smacks his rod a little bit, and it comes off.
Yeah.
We maxed out the first evening. We got our limit of 20 fish. So that was a nice, fun ride, coming back in the dark. We're like, yeah, we nailed it. Like, and Craig's looking at us like, guys, I never max out. Like, he's been out there how many times? And that's usually like how many fish he gets, like the whole time he's there.
Yeah, for two periods of fishing.
For 2 periods of fishing. 20. Yeah, usually gets about 20. So we got 20 the first evening. So that was awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of get in the dark, and then we had the lighthouse there at the end of the pier, kind of coming in as the sunset was kind of coming upon us and everything. So it's kind of cool bringing it back in, and we get back to go clean the fish, and I don't know how that was kind of a cool experience to have the first mate does most of the cleaning, I guess, and does it pretty quickly, and we put a picture up, hang all of our fish up, take a picture of it, and everything, and yeah, I'd say we did pretty good.
Yeah, so the first mate would get a wheelbarrow from the cleaning area. He went down, put all of our fish in a big wheelbarrow, and he comes up, and the other boats, people from the other boats, captains and customers, they're looking at it, they're like, wow, where'd you guys get all those fish?
They're like, did you leave any left for the rest of us? I'm like, yeah, we're going back out in the morning. Yeah, our wheelbarrow was like overflowing practically, and everybody else had 8, 10 fish, half amount or less, it seemed like. But
yeah, I'd say
it was pretty choppy,
yeah.
So
Well, again, so only the big boats went out, so there's probably only like half a dozen boats that went out anyway. But I would say they probably didn't hit the cohos as much as us.
Right, seemed like they were strictly going kings, where I think our captain was kind of like, let's see what's biting. you know.
Yeah. So, and normally, just for reference, Craig said that the cohos usually aren't out there that time of the year biting. So for whatever reason, the cohos were biting earlier this year. I think the captain said.
Yeah, it was a cooler, wetter spring, and so kind of pushed everything back like 2, 3 weeks or something like that. So that's kind of cool. And actually, that evening, I think, or it was the next day, I can't remember which, but there's other captains radioing in, "Hey, we got a pink salmon, we got a pink salmon," and we did have one or two steelheads, right, with the little blue
Yeah.
lines, yeah,
Yeah.
from that evening. But they're catching some pink salmons, and he's like, captain's like, "I've never caught pink," you know. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. At least on a charter
Yeah.
people,
That was in the morning, I believe. But yeah, that one rig caught like 3 pink
6, 7
salmons or
pinks.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So it was kind of it wasn't like a good king weekend, but I was told the co-host tastes a little better anyways. And we so package it all up, have some of the Wisconsin spotted cow, while we're cleaning some fish. We weren't really helping clean the fish. We're kind of helping a little bit by grabbing them off the wheelbarrow maybe or something like that, or helping package them up in the big bag, or whatever.
Yeah, Craig was washing the fillets after he was done getting them off and then we were bagging them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not. I wouldn't say that's super common. I don't think. I mean, I think since we had a lot, and he was like cutting up all of them by himself, where I think most of sometimes they might have two people, but it wasn't that common. I think to see other people help the first hands or something like that cut up stuff. It's kind of like, that's their job. Let them do it. We're good Midwestern boys and kind of help out a little bit. So Craig warned us. You got to be on our best behavior, otherwise he's not going to get us back. Not going to welcome us back. So yeah, I did that. Crashed for the night. Woke back up. I think I started fishing at 5 a.m. Kind of went back out, and it's kind of the same story, right? We had even less kings though the next day. I think we only had like one or two bigger sized ones, but then we had a lot of decent sized coho though. The second day.
Yeah, I don't remember getting much for decent sized kings the second day.
Right.
But yeah, so the first day we only lost one or two fish, I believe. But the second day we lost probably half of the fish we got on the line for the first hour and a half. Like we were feeling pretty bad. And I remember looking at the captain, was like, "So yeah, yesterday we were just catching, and today we're actually fishing." And he's like, I'm glad you understand the difference.
Yeah, he was getting a little frustrated off the bat, like, God dang, I was really hoping to try to max out again for you guys. We're having a heck of a time, this or that. But yeah, eventually I think we got maxed out, or one from maxing out or something that morning. So
yeah, we had I think we had maybe 18 that morning.
Yeah,
something like that. And we actually ended up with a rainbow trout.
Oh yeah,
lake trout. No, lake trout.
Those, right? Yeah, two lake trout. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit small. I think they're actually technically brown trout.
Oh, brown trout. I forget.
I can't remember now.
Anyway, they're pretty small in comparison to the salmon, but they were still like 3-pound fish.
Yeah,
they look tiny when they're up on the board.
Yeah. We were like, oh, well, we never tried those, so we kind of packaged those separately from the rest of them and stuff. But this place didn't package them up for you, so we just put them in bags, put them in coolers and stuff, and got some ice, and then hauled it back or whatever, So Craig's like, you're never gonna have as good a fishing as we did that weekend. I'm like, dang, man. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I wouldn't mind doing it again. But I have to go in realizing that's not going to be nearly as good.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about that. If we go out again, it's not just going to be a drive and fish, probably be a little vacation with the families and, go fishing for one evening or morning and stuff, and then hang out the beach. Or, they had lots of little orchards and stuff around there with lots of blueberries or apples and stone fruit, stuff like that. So it could be a nice vacation area too.
Yeah, actually, I was surprised that Lake Michigan, it does have some nice, really sandy beaches in some areas. So you can go late July, early August. It's usually pretty warm, and actually the time we went, it actually wasn't all that warm even. Like, what was it, 70 degrees? It was kind of weird late July. It was a weird July in general this year. August is kind of
it was fairly cool out in general, but then you got the lake there kind of moderating the temperature too a little bit right in the lake. So no, it wasn't too warm out, but at the same time we were wearing a sweatshirt, so it's not like it was bad.
Couldn't ask for better weather. I mean, I think there was a little bit of chance of rain, but we ended up missing it and kind of went to the other side of the lake, where because the whole entire west side of the lake was all spotted rain and stuff like that, but it didn't make it over to the east side, so it worked out really nice. But,
Yeah, and then actually the charter got canceled the next day because of the wind.
oh
And so
yeah.
we got super lucky that we actually
Oh
moved up to being during the week, because I think we originally planned on Friday, Saturday, but we ended up going
yeah.
Thursday, Friday.
Yep. And actually, it wasn't the next day. We went fishing that morning, and he canceled his evening fish.
Oh, that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah. And so he canceled. He's like, "Yep, cancel my evening fish," and I canceled it for the whole weekend because it's just going to be too windy. So we were like the last boat to go fishing that day, pretty much.
Yeah, so we got
Well,
really lucky. Yeah.
and then who was it? I don't know if I sent this to you or not, but Craig, like that Monday or Tuesday we got back, more boats went out like Monday or Tuesday or whatever, and he sent me an article picture, Snapchat or not Snapchat, but a screenshot of this article, and some boat went and drove into the pier that one morning, and it's
Yeah,
like,
that's right. You did send me that.
yeah, because the captain was like, oh yeah, every once in a while we have a guy run into the pier and try to like jump over, like not that they're actually jumping over, but that's what he'd say. And then sure enough, Craig texted me a picture a couple of days later, and there's this guy boat hit the pier, like these smaller rigs, that kind of how they have is like a depth finder and the kind of gauge by feel kind of thing, and some smaller equipment and stuff, and it can really the locals, I guess, probably don't have as much some of the high tech gear as some of the charters, I guess, but they'll snake around behind the charters and say, "Ooh, this guy, I know his boat. I'm gonna follow him, or whatever." And
He said
kind
there's
of,
a lot of weekenders too. Like he said there'd be hundreds of boats out there on the weekends,
oh
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that was kind of one nice thing about being there during the week too, was we didn't have any of the weekend boats.
yeah. We didn't have to we had to wait 5 minutes for somebody else to finish cleaning their fish before we got in line to go clean ours. Because otherwise, I imagine if everybody's coming in at the same time, you could be sitting there just waiting for an hour for someone to clean their fish, and then finally you hop in. And so, I mean, we didn't have much for wait time. Like, we really couldn't have asked for a better weekend fishing, whatever. But then we had the 13-hour drive or 14-hour drive back home.
But hey, if you got some good friends to go with, you got lots of time to catch up and chit chat, especially when you're getting a little older and don't see each other as much.
Yeah, well, that's especially true for you and Steve. I see Steve every once in a while for family events and get-togethers. So I'm fortunate that way that he's part of the family now. Yeah, no, it was a good time being able to do that, and I think Craig's interested in doing that in the future, kind of keeping that connection lined up with that captain and stay on his radar. I think he enjoyed fishing with us and whatnot too. So
Well, we
yeah,
didn't get thrown off the boat, so
yeah, that's one thing that I thought this was hilarious with this captain. He's like, oh yeah, that weekend prior I went fishing and I had this guy, and there was a group of 4 or 5 of them, and they kind of rotate for 3 or 4 different fishing trips, and I always got the one guy always came on every time, and he just tried to tell me how to fish and this and that. And I was like, well, have you ever fished for king salmon, in Michigan? Well, no. Well, then shut up.
yeah.
It's not exactly what he was saying to him, but that's how he relate the story to us,
Yeah.
like,
And he's talking about this with Craig and the first mate a little bit because they knew each other, and I was like, well, you don't have to worry about that with us. Like, we don't have a clue what we're doing. So, if we get in the way, smack us upside the back of the head and tell us to move.
yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, it was really good. I mean, it's a little bit tight, kind of the way the boat was set. That you have that bunker down the bottom, for the toilet and stuff. And for those who do get seasick, don't spend too much time down there. Sometimes you'll be up at top looking at the waves and you start feeling sick, and you go down to the cab and it just gets worse. Like, I don't know what it is, but I was almost a couple times. It's like, ooh, go to the bathroom and get out of there. Like, but then they
Yeah,
had
it's worse actually down in the cabin.
and then they had like this little, was it a 2-person bench back to back? So one was going underneath the canopy and a table, or 2 of us would sit, and then there's a bench like out in the back of the boat where you fish. 2 people could sit, so we had enough sitting space for everybody. I think they allow up to 5 in a boat for fishing, and 5 would be a lot. 4 was manageable. You always had kind of someone leaning on the back or something like that, but if they caught a fish, a guy had to move all of a sudden, type of thing. But I thought 4 was a good number. Three's more comfortable maybe, but 4's kind of nice because then you have 2 people sitting up top chit chatting, and then you have 2 people in the bottom, so it kind of kept it nice and cordial.
Yeah, it was a fun
Conversational.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, But don't message me or anything saying, hey, where'd you go fishing at? Where's your spot? I ain't telling. So appreciate you guys all for listening today, and stay tuned for the next episode.